Hey everybody, Red Mage here. Welcome back to the series where I go through different RPG products that I have and give them a quick flip through and review. It's been a while since I've done a 3-stack video, and it's also been a while since I've covered any of these really amazing Shadowdark supplements that have been coming out. And I was sent 3 different ones, 3 different Shadowdark settings that are just really cool. They're all very different. They're not the standard kind of fantasy Western Shadowdark vibe, but they all use the rule set and they all are great expansions with complete worlds and, well, at least a complete setting with extra classes, new monsters, tons of dungeons and stuff like that. I'm going to be going through Final Torch Issue 2, Pirates of Barnacle Bay, which is a pirate setting with a Fey ocean, which is a great idea. Really cool. I'm going to be covering Soulblight, the First Cycle, which is sort of a Stone Age take on the Soulblight setting, or it's the Stone Age era of the Soulblight setting, so you kind of know what you're going to be getting with a Stone Age setting. But combine it with Soulblight, which I've reviewed a few times on the channel, and you get a really fantastic setting. And then finally, I'm going to be covering Veilstone, a Gothic Western. It's sort of like a weird Western take on the Shadowdark RPG, and I love all 3, but this one might be my favorite because it's so outside the box. It's really cool. So first, I want to cover the Pirates of Barnacle Bay Issue 2 Final Torch. Now, I've covered Final Torch Issue 1 before, which was the Jungles of Karatha, and I really liked the Jungles of Karatha, not just because of the dungeons there, but because of the whole aesthetic. And this whole supplement does the same. It's 109 pages in PDF form, and you see what you're going to get here on the table of contents. You get a whole hex map with all the different locations keyed on there. Some of them are given just a little bit of detail, but some of them are given a lot more detail, especially the ones with the big dungeons and things like that. You get rules for ships and ship combat, which is really cool. You're going to need that in a pirate setting. You're going to get some random encounter tables for the different kinds of locations, as well as a cool list of pirate ships and lawful ships, which is great. And then you get some adventures. The Port of Barnacle Bay, the Tomb of the Tides, and the White Lodge Hunting Club, which are great little adventures. And the White Lodge Hunting Club is not quite a traditional adventure. I'll get to it in a bit. And then you get In Search of Lost Treasures, which is a whole overview of, special treasure maps and NPCs and the lost treasures you can find. And then, of course, the monsters, as well as some additional items. And then you get the credits and the supplemental stuff. This is a really cool adventure. And just like a lot of the sort of, what I would say, Shadowdark supplements that we've been seeing, especially things like Letters from the Dark, we get cool in-world text throughout. I like that. It helps set the tone. Now, the art is this sort of watercolor. Well, I really like it. It's particularly fitting with a piratey, watery themed adventure. I actually thought so. It was really good for the jungle one, but I actually think it works better here. It feels more precise, more right. You get a cool introduction here into this issue and what you're going to be getting as an overall. So here's the hex map of the Barnacle Isles, as well as the breakdown of the different locations here. And you get a really cool feature is that you see the names of each of the locations on the hex. So it's not just the number and you have to go to it. You actually see the name right there of what the hex is, just how it's described. And it just goes down in columns. So you get the different descriptions. So 6234, 6240, 6243, 6331. So you just get the different columns going down. You get also the type of terrain that you get, but again, you get 2 maps, because not only do you get the regular world map, you also get the Fey Ocean, which is what happens if you sail over the edge, or rather what happens if you get some, you flip over into this Fey Ocean, and it's a set place with edges. And when you go over the edge of the Fey Ocean, well, the stuff that happens to you beyond is not good. Let's just say that. As you can see, the format is the same as the regular ocean. You just get a brief description of each hex, and you're going to see that you get the hex descriptions just like the others on the next page. But you also get this sort of abyss surrounding the Fey Ocean, and if you go over the edge, it's not great. You have a very small chance of returning, but you do have a chance of returning. And what's really cool is if you do return from the abyss, you get this cool D20 lasting effect table. So what happens to you when you come back? If you win, if you have this battle with the shadows and you succeed, what changes about you? And there's some really cool elements here, like you can recognize other people who have succeeded. So you can see other people who have come back from the abyss. That would be a really cool thing to see. You're looking at a regular pirate crew, and they all look like normal, scallywags, and then one of them you see has the triangle of fire. The red triangle burned into their forehead. And you know that, oh, this guy's special. This guy's cool. In the tradition of Shadowdark, you get D100 tables for encounters for the different kinds of locations, so Barnacle Bay Town, and various other kinds of encounters like coastal islands, the deep sea, etc. And what you'll notice is that a lot of these are pirate ship encounters, which is really cool, and you'll get extra pirate ships on page 38. Now, there's no hyperlinking here. Would have been nice if there were. If there was, just a little bit, because then you can click on the monsters that are specific to the setting or the page numbers that are given, and it would take you right there, especially with hexes. That'd be pretty cool, but it's not necessary. It's just to be a cool addition. I kind of tend to harp on hyperlinking. It's a thing I really like. Yeah. But you get a bunch of really cool encounters. These lost pirate ships. Yeah, that's awesome. I'll go through the first adventure briefly. The Port of Barnacle Bay, which is a level 1 pirate town for Shadowdark. It's more of a location with some stuff happening there, as well as some local legends, which are all really cool. So this adds some flavor to the conversations of the various NPCs. Also, it provides useful rumors that are related to the different locations and adventures in this setting. So, for example, number 6, a squall giant was once so angry that it hurled a ship called the Moorfoot clear across the sea, and it landed up on a grassy hill. See Hex 6538 and Lost Treasure of the Moorfoot, page 74. Or, lucky town visitors are often never heard from again. Townsfolk debate whether it's because the town is delightful or deadly. And then you can see Hex 6732. So each of them relate to a particular place. It's not just some generic, flavorful rumor, which it could, but they all are gameable or they relate to the world. And those are the kinds of rumors and legends and things that I really, really like. Generic rumors that don't actually do anything or that are false and have no relation to truth are just pointless to me. Actually, it's worse than pointless. I've talked about this before. I really like false rumors, but they're false for a reason, right? Like they're false in a way that helps the players figure something out or makes sense to the players when they find out that it's false. Not just an untrue statement, but an untrue statement that reveals something about the person telling them, or about the world assumptions, or about the monster in question. That would be cool, right? Like a thing out in the forest, townsfolk might call it a demon. Okay, it's not a demon, it's actually just a giant spider or something like that. Fair enough. The fact that they call it a demon isn't a false rumor. It's just the way that they perceive it. The players will go, oh, okay, it's not really a demon. It's just a way that the players perceive it. They won't feel cheated. They'll feel more immersed in the world. Those are the kinds of false rumors that I like. And these, true or false, relate to the gameplay of the world and help the players navigate it. That's really cool. I like that a lot. But as you go forward, you get some cool maps. Barnacle Bay, it's pretty straightforward. You get a few locations here. And you get the overview of the town, quick reference to it, some details. It's a little bit like Tortuga or something like that. There are some games here like Dwarven Shooters and Walking the Plank. Some specific NPCs like Silas McGraw, and just a bunch of details about this town, which is great, right? Because it's just a location where you can find interesting things and where you can talk to interesting NPCs, and there's no particular quest or adventure here. It's more for fun. You can come up with your own based on these NPCs. There's special carousing tables for this location and some quest ideas and things to do at the end. But those are just for you to develop beyond this, because what you're given is a location and a hex crawl. And so this is your hub. You're going to start here, and this is a good description of this hub. I like it a lot. The next adventure, The Tomb of the Tides, is much more standard. It's a regular adventure, and I'm not going to spend much time on it. In fact, I'm not going to go through it. I want to jump to the third adventure in this book, The White Lodge Hunting Club, which is an adventure for any level. And that might sound a little strange, but it's not a traditional adventure. You'll see that. Essentially, this is an event where all of the players are trying to go hunting creatures, right? That's the idea here, is to catch deadly creatures, dead or alive. And you can change the timeline, you can change what the prize is, you can change the team list, you can change all of this stuff. And, you can't cheat or lie. That's unallowed, not allowed. But everything else, the White Lodge Hunting Club, is just sort of an open-ended, you can make it an annual event, you could make it a monthly event, you could just do this as a one-shot for the players. They could come up with a pirate crew and some bunch of pirates and go out and join this. It's a really, really cool adventure and a cool idea. And it's pretty simple. I mean, that's really it. You just have a scoring system and the ceremony and then the target list. And then it's up to you. It's a great idea. It's very simple, but really, really cool. And then there's In Search of Lost Treasures, which, as I said, is just a whole bunch of adventure seats. Monsters and maps, different lost treasures, different locations, different notable NPCs. There are particular lost treasures that you can find going forward, like the Sunken City or the Moon Tide or the Moorfoot. These are the things that have been referenced before in the adventure. It's a really, really cool idea, and it makes sense because you're building out a hex crawl, you're building out a sandbox, a wave crawl, maybe, it's a better way of putting it. And so all of this stuff is not going to be, I don't know, this is just a great way of designing adventures. I thought this about the Jungles of Karatha, but there was more of a narrative through line with the Jungles of Karatha because the adventures kind of flowed one into the other. This is not even that. This is way more like my preference. Here's an area, here's a bunch of cool stuff happening, here's a bunch of cool treasure and a bunch of cool locations and a bunch of cool NPCs. They all have their own motivations. Here's a bunch of cool tables and a bunch of cool monsters. Go for it. That's the best kind of supplement. It doesn't spend a lot of time on new classes or ancestries. In fact, no time on new classes or ancestries, which in my mind are like the kind of the most boring part of any supplement. I just don't care about those. What I really care about is a cool world, a really, really cool world that's being presented in a cool way. And this is precisely that. So I highly, highly recommend Final Torch Issue 2. I'll put a link below to where you guys can get it. And, you know, I think right now it's on sale. I think it's about $10 right now on sale, and it's totally worth it. So go check it out. If you like the idea of a pirate sandbox with a bunch of cool stuff, then issue number 2 of Final Torch is for you. At this point, the Soulblight setting by Lauren David Wegan has been expanded so much, and there's so many different cool supplements for it, that you could just spend years and years and years playing in that setting, in that world. And the first cycle adds in an entirely new dimension to it. Well, the fourth dimension. It talks about a very, very different time. Before the time of iron and steel, there was an age of stone and clay, where the nights were long and the flame a second sun in the hands of mortal man. A hex crawl through a primal world. This is a Stone Age hex crawl world setting. It is absolutely fantastic. It's no exception to the rest of the Soulblight setting. It's just top tier. This is really, really good stuff. You have an introduction. Again, the table of contents is very clear and easy to read. You got an introduction, you have the different locations, you have new character classes, class adjustments, new ancestries, the different tribes, and basically it's like a gazetteer of the world. So you have the different plate people of the world, the Dweller tribes, the Engulfed tribes, the Harther tribes, the Eldritch tribes, the Men of Metal tribes, and the Wanderer tribes, as well as the religions and the various faces, which are sort of NPCs or important figures in the world, important, things, important entities in the world. You have some new character options, some new rituals, which is really cool for ancient, it's not sword and sorcery, it's not sword and sandal, it's Stone Age fantasy, and that's a very different thing. It's not something that we see very often. I think if you go back to, Appendix N touchstones, there are very few Stone Age. Even I would say Conan is after the Stone Age, right? I mean, he's in the realm of the sword and sorcery, although at times it verges on the Stone Age. But I think you're looking at things like the quest for fire, maybe, right? Or maybe fire and ice. I know it's sword and sorcery, but I put that more, that cartoon, right? I put that more into almost the Stone Age fantasy. There's not very much for it. This is a really cool version of that. Now there, as you can see, lots and lots of stuff. This is a huge, huge book. And I think this one is also only $10 over on itch, so I'll put a link to where you can get it. You get a good hex in the style of the, you have to turn your head a bit, but you get a cool hex crawl in the style of the standard Shadowdark hex crawls from the zines that were released officially. So it's in the same style as those, with the different bolded or the bordered hexes that are important, and the different locations that are highlighted there. Once again, most of the art here is public domain without editing. Sometimes it's been edited or changed to make it a little more punky, but mostly it's public domain without editing, and it is mostly absolutely fantastic. It's really, really right in the vibe. That's one thing that I would say about the whole Soulblight setting, is that the use of public domain art is really cohesive. There are times when I'll find a piece that I'm like, man, I can see why that might have been picked. I don't like it particularly here, but it's kind of an exception. For the most part, it just draws you right in to this particular world, the Stone Age world, and the art there is quite good. How to adjust the classes to give them that primal feel, that's really, really cool. And some primal ancestries, so things like Beastman, Dwarf, Elf, Goblin, Halfling, Human. Then you get Ophidian and Lizardman, right? So you get some additional weird ancestries there. And you're also going to start with a tribe, and that's going to change you slightly. So each tribe has general alignment, but also when you pick a tribe, you have a starting gift, right? An item, token, or boon that ties you to your tribe. And so this idea of the tribe is going to be an important element of world building and of your character creation and of the campaigns, probably, that you would make here. And that makes sense. It's also really cool because you see the populations of these various places is not high, right? We're talking 200, 400, 400 people, 550 people, right? We're talking 100 people for the Sarpa. We're not talking about massive empires here, civilizations. We're talking about a tribe where an individual is a huge percentage of the tribe. And so survival is way closer. It's one of the coolest elements of this setting is the way that the tribes are developed and explained, but they're almost just like, well, they're just extended families. And so if you make a character from a tribe, you're going to have to kind of be tied to that tribe. And I would imagine campaigns will either be tribally based, so everyone's going to make a Moonsinger this time, or everyone's going to make a Sarai this time, or something like that. Or a Scry, excuse me. I thought that was an A. It's a K. The Scry. Or if you're going to say, okay, we're all going to pick, members from different tribes, maybe you do something like Predator, right? Where a bunch of people are kind of stuck together and there's some horrible creature coming to chase them, or, something like that, where they have to work together. But this is going to be a very different kind of campaign than one in which you're going around even ancient cities of stone and finding steel swords and going to towers of the elephant and things like that. Like, that's not the kind of world that you're developing here. There are some men of metal, right? The first to draw copper and tin from the rock and smelt them into bronze. So there are some people. And as you can see, the Red Empire is a population of 30,000. That's the first of these sort of more Bronze Age past the Stone Age people. So we're right at the edge of the Stone Age in this world. Now, if you wanted to ignore that, you could just make a campaign that didn't relate to those. But I think that's kind of a cool moment, right? It's sort of the end of these Stone Age peoples, and now we're getting into the beginning of the empires of the world, the first empires of the world. And 30,000 is quite big compared to like tribes of 50 people or 300 people, right? I mean, you could imagine one of those quests where you're the tribesmen up in the mountains or up in the wildlands, and slavers from the Red Empire come and take your tribe, and they raid a whole bunch of tribes, and the survivors have to try to go and rescue those who've been captured, or reclaim a sacred relic that's been taken by the Red Empire that they were sworn to protect by their god or something. There's tons of ideas, right? There's ideas flood into your head when you put yourself into a new setting like this. A very different setting that we don't usually see. I dig it. One of the interesting elements here is that the idea of the passage of the seasons and the different phenomena that can occur in those seasons. It's harsh, right? Travel and just living in the world is part of the challenge in a Stone Age world. There's no town you can go to and stay at a tavern, right? There's no quick ration you can buy. And so the idea of survival is going to be very, very important. And so the seasons themselves are going to play a key role in your ability to survive, and making each of them interesting with these new kinds of disasters that can take place. Because if everything goes well, there's no adventure, right? You got to have something go wrong for your players. So what's going on in the summer? A wildfire is just a disaster. There's nothing you can do about that. But a thunderstorm is just as dangerous. There's lightning striking all over the place. You can't go inside. There's nowhere to hide quickly. It's really, really cool. The different kinds of weapons that you can have. And you can have up to bronze, but only a handful have that, and so I would probably imagine that most players, unless you're playing characters from the Red Empire, most characters are not going to have access to bronze. Maybe they're not even going to have access to, proper wood or leather. They're probably going to have stone and sling, not worked things. Maybe they have some worked spears and arrows and things like that, but for the most part, they're not going to. Now you get some really, really cool rules for carousing, some special carousing rules like telling stories by the fire, which is awesome. If you're in the city of Dahaz, right, then you can actually carouse using hack copper, And so you can actually go through and find things like cooked meat and fermented milk and honeyed fruit. You can actually go and spend your time having a good time, whatever that might be, like playing games of Knucklebones, for example. But then there's some dangerous stuff that can happen in town too. And the Soulblight here, right, it's not yet here, but it is going to be here in a matter of time, right? So it's sort of the Soulblight is not here yet. Its sovereign has not yet been chosen. Ruin and decay are yet to set in, but you know, this is the setting of Soulblight, so something is going to be here. And the Soulblight is not going to have no part in this world. But you also have lycanthropy and werewolfism and stuff like that. Really cool. Now here you have the major keyed locations, and you can see it's pretty much the standard Shadowdark column description. We see it in Final Torch, and I think it's just relating back to the initial descriptions of the hexes from the official Shadowdark zines. I think that's what most of the settings that we're gonna see from Shadowdark do, and it makes sense, right? Just following the format that's been presented as the sort of core, and it makes sense to fit that vibe. And I think it's a good description. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward, easy to follow. The one thing I would say is it would be nice to have the map a little bit more frequently. This book is very, very big, and unlike the little zines, which are just a handful of pages, it's quite easy to flip back and forth. This one's a little harder, so you have to, print out that one page or keep it out separately. That's what I'd recommend. It's not hard. You can just, extract that page or screenshot it and have it up as you're playing, or if you're going to print it off, I would recommend printing it off. But, it would be maybe nice to have it a little more frequently, but not a huge deal at all. And I can see why it was left off. Great descriptions of the various locations, a lot of really cool ones too, and there are some dragons in this world, which is great. One of my favorite parts of any book is the bestiary, and this has a great bestiary, especially because many of the beasts are just dinosaurs or big animals. I love that. You don't have, you do have some weird stuff in here too, but you just have a lot of, you have an albino tortoise, along with some, the baryonyx or the stegosaurus or the various things, the golden scorpion, and it's an arachnid colossi with a curse-dripping stinger. That's really, really cool. The horned lion, the man-ape, the mountain mole, Quetzalcoatlus, the silver kipper, the swarm octopus, that's really cool, the woolly rhinoceros. Some really, really cool creatures. You also get, of course, the blighted, which are those creatures that are born in the chasm below the world. And they come up and are pretty awful. Things like the abyssal dragon, the bull man, the cantor, the chasm knight, the hand of the chasm, excuse me. Some really, really creepy stuff. And these are weird, really, really creepy stuff. Much, in my opinion, much cooler than even just the standard things that we see in most Shadowdark or most fantasy settings. At the very back of the book, we have one dungeon, the Amber Hold. It's a cool map of the dungeon. It's looped nicely, and you get it on every page of the adventure, so it's a cool adventure. It's a level 3 through 4 dungeon, which is interesting because you're not therefore going to be running this initially if you're going to start off with level 1 characters in first cycle. You're going to be running this after they've done some things in the world. I actually really like that. We see a lot of first level adventures, and it's pretty easy to either create your own first level adventure or drop in something from another setting and adapt it. So the fact that you get a little slightly higher level adventure is pretty cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. And it's a cool adventure, like I said. I'm not going to go through in detail. But the whole book is great. First cycle is, I think, my favorite of the Soulblight set. I keep saying that every time a new Soulblight book comes out, or I get a hold of it, because each time I'm drawn a little bit more into the setting. And I think this is a great addition. So I highly recommend that everybody get Soulblight. I think you can get over on itch, as I said. I'll put a link below to where you can get it. Thank you very much to Lauren David Wegan for sending it to me. And yeah, I'm really glad that I have this one. It's full of great ideas that even if you don't want to run a Stone Age setting, you can take for a Sword and Sorcery setting, or for a Sword and Sandal setting, or for a Sword and Planet setting, or even just adapt it to your fantasy game of choice. Really, really good. Finally, we have Veilstone, a Gothic Western. And as I said, this is probably my favorite of the three, and if you guys have watched the whole video up to this point, you'll know that means this must be pretty dang good, because my opinion of Final Torch and of First Cycle is really, really high. And Veilstone is super cool. Really, really cool. Now, the format is what we've seen in the other books so far, and what we see in the standard Shadowdark format for settings. You get a cool hex map, you get descriptions of the different locations, you get new ancestries, you get new classes, you get magic items, you get new monsters, so it's a full setting. You get some adventures, but you also just get the details of each of these locations and the world that's being developed here in Veilstone. Like I said, it's Weird West, and I'm a big fan of the Weird West. I haven't actually, I don't know, I haven't played myself in a game set in the Weird West. I've read a lot of stuff that's sort of Weird West, and I have this sympathy and affection for it based on things like, what's that board game called? Brimstone, I think, or I forget what it's called now. But it's sort of a hero game where you go through this town that's been ripped apart by this magical ore and this dimension, multi-dimensional things, and you're playing, saloon girls and prospectors and gunslingers, and you're trying to do that. Or there was a comic book that I read a long time ago that was a weird Western comic book that had like zombies in the Wild West, and it was really, really cool. And I love this whole vibe, and yet I haven't actually read it or gotten into it in some time. And so when I got this book, it was like a blast from the past, and it was like, whoa, I forgot the Weird West is awesome, and made me want to go back and play a Weird West game. I've played a couple. I should say I have played a couple Weird West games, just one-offs. We did like 5th edition rules where we did some Weird West. We just modified the 5e magic and stuff to make it more like class op, maneuvers and stuff like that for characters in a Weird West. At any rate, here's what you get in this book. It's 140 pages. You get new ancestries, some original classes, and some adopting, or I should say, you get some new classes, and it talks about how to adapt the original classes to this world. Things like how to change armor, for example, and magic. You get some additional backgrounds and titles, and the powers of the Veil, which is the special setting for here, the power boons here. The new magic from this world, the Spirit Guide in particular. And the new rules for gameplay here, dueling, carousing, law and order, new gear, new weapons, makeshift armor. But the majority of this book is the setting, which I'm very happy about, right? From page 49 all the way through to the end, 140, you get details of this world. You get in that chunk of the book, you get the locations of the place itself, some rumors there. You also get some monsters, the treasure that you find there, and then a dungeon, the Fane of Lamashtu, which is a pretty big dungeon. As you can see, it's 27 rooms, but we'll get there. Pretty cool. Once again, you get these cool, flavorful descriptions from the world, and sort of in-world, flavor text that helps set you there. And a good bit of writing as an introduction to the setting. You get great art throughout, too. Sometimes it's from public domain, but for the most part, it's original. The cover, when I first saw it, I have to admit, I thought it was a little AI looking, but I went and looked into it, and it's not AI at all. It's just a really, really evocative piece. But I think some people might have that impression. I don't think any AI art was used throughout this whole book, so keep that in mind if it's something that worries you. It's just the style. It's not actually the execution. You get some new ancestries like the Revenant and the Veil Touched, as well as, I'm sure, basically the standard human, right? It says, are you gonna really play elves and dwarves and things like that, right? It's the American West of the mid-19th century. So it's an alternate version of our Earth. You could change different kinds of humans, right? Like you could make elves a certain kind of human. You could make dwarves a certain kind of human. What I would probably say is just everyone's humans, and you can pick, pick one of the racial attributes to get. So you're just playing a human though, right? So you just start off with one of the racial benefits, whatever it might be. You could also just say simply, humans, revenants, and Veil Touched are the 3 ancestries you can play. Here's how to adapt the 4 original classes. They sort of play with a base armor class here instead of equipping armor. You can do makeshift armor, but there's sort of an idea that we're all just going to have a base AC instead of wearing certain kinds of stuff. And then the kinds of weapons they might be equipped with. But you get some new classes too, the Gunfighter, the Scout, the Doctor, and the Spirit Guide. And I would probably say, if you're going to play this world, just use these. Yeah, the 4 original, okay, but I would say, if you're going to play in this setting, use the 3 ancestries, use the 4 classes, and it'll be way better than adding in wizards and clerics and things like that. Really cool classes too. Now, I can't say I have, played them, so I can't say I know how they feel in terms of balance, in terms of this world, in terms of relative to the starting ones. What I would say is, most of the time, classes are, and new classes, new ancestries, player-facing rules if they fit with the world and if they're a kind of a crucial part of the world, I'm all about it. I don't really like supplements that are just new ancestries and new classes. I've talked about this before. I think it's kind of a waste of creative energy. I think I would advise people, creators, to aim away from putting out supplements full of new classes and new ancestries. I think it actually changes the expectations of the game a little bit. And I think very often they're not balanced well and they're not well conceived. And if I'm being honest, I think very often those are kind of money grabs. If I'm just being honest, people put it out there to try to make a buck, not because they really think it's a great contribution to the hobby. Okay, anyway, leaving that aside, when you present a setting book and there are classes or ancestries that are specific to that setting and really that you should play instead of the base ones, totally fine with that. Because what that's doing is it's helping to build the world. Your characters are now going to feel much more nestled into this actual world. So firmly support anything like that. And we saw that in the first two, right? Or we didn't see it at all in Final Torch. There's no extra classes or ancestries. But in First Cycle and in Veilstone, the new stuff that you're given is nestled into the world. It's not just, extra player options for the sake of extra player options. So really well done. This is how those sorts of player options, in my opinion, this is how those sorts of player options should be implemented in books like this. Not only do I think it's okay, I think it's really, really good. Here are the different powers of the Veil. You get the Wayfaring Stranger, the Moth Lady, and the Pale Rider. Really, really cool, almost like warlock patrons. They don't seek worship, but they have something that they want, and it requires something of you. Spiritual mishaps, great. And they're all pretty cool. So for example, if you really mess up, you can inadvertently summon the Pale Rider. That's so cool. Right, I mean, I can imagine you casting a spell in the middle of a battle. Suddenly you invoke the Pale Rider. He just, destroys the enemies, whatever you're facing, solves your problem, and then turns to you and says, all right, now how are you going to help me, partner? That sort of thing. I think that would be great. Some really, really cool spirit guide spells. Really, again, this whole setting is done very, very well. It implements the player options in a way that's super flavorful and helps build the world up. These are not just power creep versions of what we've already seen. These are really cool spells. You have new rules, including rules for gunfighting and rules for all of that, but you also have rules for makeshift armor, and one of my favorite is the Iron Stove chestplate, which is of course a reference to A Fistful of Dollars. At the very end, it's one of the coolest scenes in any Western ever, right? When Tuco shoots at the man with no name, and he looks like he's killed him, but of course he stands right up and he keeps shooting him and he keeps getting up. Such a good scene. Man. So anyway, I love that when I saw that. And I love the piece of art that's sort of reminiscent of that too. You got the poncho and everything. It's just great. Oh man, that's such a good movie. Yeah, everyone should watch the Fistful of Dollars. Really, you should watch all three of those, the Man with No Name trilogy. Classic D&D adventures right there. I'm not even kidding, by the way. D&D has much more in common with the Western than I think it does with a lot of other genres. The idea of coming into a town that's overrun with bandits and having to solve the problem, that's like classic D&D trope, and that's a Western trope too. The frontier town where you're dealing with, the sheriff and all that. Yeah, anyway, I could go on and on. But actually, I think the Western is one of the best touchstones for regular D&D, which is why I think Weird West games or magical Western games work so well. It's just like sci-fi, it kind of blends right into the role-playing genre, and there isn't enough attention paid to that, I think, at least in my opinion. Some new gear and some reasons why you might use that new gear. Pretty cool. Rules for crime and infamy, and of course this is great because as you develop a reputation, right, the reward for your punishment is going to go up and up and up, and the reward for your capture. Now, that can work two ways. If you're a villain, if you're a criminal, well then you know what you're going to get if you start to do these things, right? You steal a horse, well that's going to put you in prison, probably get you killed. You do a bank robbery or a stagecoach robbery, well that's also going to get you in prison or killed, but that's much more immediately disruptive to the system as a whole. Stealing a horse is bad, but robbing everybody is worse. You have different infamy levels and what the law party is going to look like if it's going to go catch you, right? If it's just a petty criminal, you're going to have maybe 1 to 4 deputies going to get you, but if you're an infamous villain, it's going to be a posse or a legendary bounty hunter. And if you, the party, are at this point high levels of infamy, well, then you're going to have people coming after you trying to win the bounty. That's so cool. And I love this wanted poster of Joaquin Murrieta. I think he's a real guy, or was Joaquin Murrieta. Yeah, wanted dead or alive for $5,000. That's a lot of money. That's a big reward. That's really cool. The description of the valley itself is, as you might imagine, it's pretty similar to the other, I mean, not the description of it, the layout of it is pretty similar to what we've seen in other books. What I really like about this, though, is that you get right away a blending of the Shadowdark rules for encounter travel with overworld travel. So if you travel on roads and in towns, it's unsafe. If you travel off the roads in wilderness, town at night, it's risky. And any wilderness at night, subterranean environment, if it's reduced visibility or whatever, then it's deadly. And you're going to be therefore rolling many more encounters. That's really cool. So the players have a choice of when they're going to travel, where they're going to travel, and they know. I would tell them just straight up, here is the condition: unsafe, risky, and deadly in these different conditions. That way they know. Really, really cool. You have the Veil, and what the Veil is. It's a fog-shrouded interdimensional intersection between the material world and the space between spheres, and other times known as Purgatory, Hell, Sheol, or Limbo. In Veilstone Valley, ancient sorcery summoned the Veilstone monoliths, anchoring the Veil to this land. Really cool. You get a whole bunch of cool rumors, and most of these seem very usable. Once again, D100 table of rumors, and they do seem like they relate to the world. Now, I haven't mapped them all up to particular things in the game, but they all do seem like they do. And again, I'm a huge fan of rumors like that. Not true or false, but actually just relating to the world. Either they tell the players more, or they tell the players more from the perspective of somebody, and so they feel more like they're, even if it's not true, it's what the people of the world think to be true, and that tells them more about it. I'm okay with that sort of thing. Cool generators for gangs and posses, and then you get the hex keys for the whole valley. Once again, because this is such a big book, 140 pages, it might be nice to have the map repeated here as opposed to just at the beginning. You also get it separately, and you can extract it. Again, obviously, take a screenshot and have it. So it's not the end of the world. It would just be nice to have it right away. But once again, you get this big description of each of these locations, a lot of background, and a lot of helpful information to run them. The new monsters that are present in Veilstone, and you get a bunch of really good ones. As you can tell, there's a sort of like Gothic element here, so you definitely do have vampires and things like that. Lots of spirits, the Bedlam Boy, I like that. The Beasts of Burden, Blood Specters, right? You got lots of cool stuff. The Dark Watcher, some demons. Really creepy. The Darrow. But these are special Darrow. They're not the usual Darrow you might imagine, these little dwarves living under the earth. Really cool. At the very end of the book, you get the adventure, the Fane of Lamashtu. And it's got a really creepy little flavor text there. Mommy's with the maggots now. It's a great piece of art as well. Here you go. In the high peaks beyond Sloat's Hollow lies Tuck's Place, the ruined homestead of the valley's legendary founder. Once a symbol of frontier resilience, the cabin now serves as the festering heart of something far darker. You got the Bedlam Boys, different factions that are playing here. Mayor Agnes Barton of Sloat, the Ghost Vale Rangers. And then you get the dungeon itself. And it's pretty creepy. It's a pretty creepy place. Now, I would like to see the map right away, as opposed to waiting until the end. It's helpful for me to have the map first and to get a sense of the whole, and then even if I have to jump back to it, I can. I don't tend to like having to go to the end to see the map of a place and then coming back and going forward and back. I like the map right away. So that's one criticism I would have here. But the dungeon itself is really cool, very creepy, very fitting. It feels like a Weird West. It feels like a kind of Gothic horror Western, which is really, really cool. I highly approve of this one as well. Showing you the map very briefly, it's very well laid out. You have obviously you have the Tuck's Place and the attic of Tuck's Place, but then you go down below it, you get into the hidden mine, you start to get into the caverns, you start to get into this big fane, this temple of a demon, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's well laid out. You can see, for the most part, you have some choices about which direction to go, but you're kind of being funneled one direction, and that's fine. That's totally cool. By the time you get to 8, then you go to 10, you go to 12, you go to 13, you're going to end up at 22, but you can go to 22 and 24 through either the side passage or through those big steps. So, or you could even go around 16 into 26. So there's various ways of getting to the end. That's great. So it's well looped. players have choice about how they're going to approach it. They don't have to do the whole dungeon in order to get to the end. Always a big fan of that, right? If the players want to search the place, they can, but they don't have to. Overall, I think Veilstone is a fantastic setting. Again, like I said, it's one of my favorites. I think it is one of my favorites I've read in a long time. And even though I think all three of these, Final Torch, First Cycle, they're both amazing, Veilstone it scratches an itch that I didn't notice I'd had for a long time. They're all very different, right? They're not the traditional Western fantasy. They're not the traditional Shadowdark fantasy, the sort of grimdark dungeon crawling. But they all have that Shadowdark flavor and the design, which is really good. And they build on the base Shadowdark rules in their own ways. So all three of these settings are fantastic, and I think you'd have great fun with each of them. And I recommend you guys get them all, really. But, I'm sure one of these will strike you as more interesting than the others. I do want to run at least elements of all three, and I think I would like to run a game in Veilstone. I think I'd probably take a lot from... I'll take a lot from all of them. The one that I would say is maybe the hardest to just simply adapt to another game is Veilstone. It's the one that seems like you kind of have to run it as is. But even so, there's a lot of good ideas here that you could adapt to your game of choice. You could take and just make it not Western. But if you want kind of a creepy, Weird West vibe in your more traditional fantasy, then you could easily take it and use it for that. So I've looked at Veilstone, a Gothic Western, Soulblight the First Cycle, and Final Torch Issue 2, Pirates of Barnacle Bay. I'll put links below to where you can get them all. Hope this has been interesting to everybody, and I'll see you all in another video.